Now, the Prime Minister faced questions from a senior committee of MPs at Westminster this afternoon, as we've been reporting and discussing. They covered Ukraine, lockdown parties, net zero, and the cost of living. Boris Johnson, he defended Chancellor Rishi Sunak's decision not to upgrade universal credit in the spring statement to help people pay, well, rising energy bills, apart from anything else. There's pressure on the government to go further now. And we can talk to Jamie Driscoll, who is the Labour mayor of North of Tyne. Jamie, good evening.
Hello, John.
So tell me about this from your perspective, from where you are, starting from where you are politically. You are now described often as the last core minister in power, aren't you? But you didn't like to be described in that way.
I'm not sure I'd describe myself like that. And I think there's plenty of people who agree with the same policy programme as well, including Welsh Labour. It's notable, actually. I mean, if we look at what the Chancellor didn't do last week, I think it's quite informative. There was nothing in there about the flagship programme of levelling up. There was nothing in there about dealing with the climate emergency. Yeah. And despite all the talk, there's nothing in there about, for example, energy security. Now, we have a major set of industries along the Tyne to develop offshore wind.
Yes.
And there's one of the things that would make a massive difference would be to change what's called the local content rules. And I'll explain why. There's been a couple of big wind farms built in the North Sea recently. £500 million of orders went to China, £250 million orders went to the Gulf. And this saved the developers £1 million in total. Now, if the government just enforced the local content rules, which is that a certain percentage of the content has to be made in UK yards, the payroll taxes alone on that will be worth millions, hundreds of millions to the Treasury. Yes. It pays for itself.
And you, Jimmy, you want to see a new local payroll tax, don't you? Presumably that's on top of income tax and national insurance.
Well, no, what I would like to see is, for example, my job is to create jobs. So I've been in power a little under 3 years now. I have a target. By now I should have about 940 jobs in the pipeline. It's actually 4,500. We've done terrifically well, despite the pandemic. But we don't get any more money for that.
Yes.
And if I was running a branch of Mitsubishi or some global corporation, they'll be pouring money in saying, you're obviously doing something right, develop more. So what I've been calling for is a payroll retention. So you get business rates retention at the moment. But if we're creating lots of jobs, I want Treasury to let me have the first 18 months of those actual taxes in order that I can create more jobs.
Right.
Because the Treasury is always reluctant to devolve powers, to devolve money. Here, they don't have to devolve anything unless we've already made the money for them.
Yeah. Okay, so not a new tax, but a new share of the taxes that come in. Now, I know you believe, didn't you, that you, in some ways, had a bit of a sympathetic hearing from Rishi Sunak and Michael Gove. Is that the case? Where are you on the same page?
I think we're on the same page, perhaps. I've only had one meeting with Rishi, but perhaps with some of the others in terms of, for example, on transport. Across the north, it's now the position, Michael Gove's agreed to talk to us with Treasury on the idea of land value uplift. So when we put in new public transport links, the value of the land goes up. And it tends to be land bankers who get these windfalls. And what we'd like to see is to use that genuine creation of wealth to fund the programme itself. So we're not waiting 15, 20 years for things to happen. We can kind of crack on with them. Yeah. So these are I think, where we need to be going with levelling up is a level of decentralisation in how we fund things and not putting taxes on people in my area who frankly can't afford it.
Yeah, and would you go so far as then to say that you think Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, is a politician you can do business with?
I think, yes, Michael Gove is certainly someone who's open-minded and wants to get things done. I think there's a number of Conservative cabinet ministers that we've got good relationships with who they want the same outcomes. Whether they're willing to have the political will to make them happen is we'll find out over the next couple of years.
Right, you've got a bit of a shopping list then of things you'd like to see done. Let's look at what you've been there 3 years. Tell me a bit about your distinct contribution as North Tyne Mayor to what have you been able to achieve, especially in helping people with the cost of living crisis.
Well, the number one thing is our good work pledge. So, like I say, 4,500 jobs being created. way more than we were forecast to do. And every one of them is backed by the Good Work Pledge, which includes paying the real living wage, not the government's minimum wage or national living wage, as they call it. That's an extra 40 quid a week, which makes a big difference to people who are low paid. And it guarantees things like secure contracts, no fire and rehire, obviously big in the news after P&O ferries. And it makes sure also that we're working to get people the skills. So often people who are what were described as a long way from the labour market, who might have issues around missed out on education, sometimes complex issues around mental health, a lot of programs to get people so that they can actually earn a good living, so that not only the jobs being created, but they're widely available to everybody. So that's the way out of it, I think.
Well, so coming from where you do on the Labour spectrum, and you'd very happily embrace the label of being pretty much on the left. You are. I called you a Corbynite. You're not going to disagree with all that, and I know you don't like to be analysed through the Westminster lens. So I'm going to not do that. But I am going to invite you to tell us a bit more about yourself in this way. Define yourself as against, without. I'm not looking for point scoring here or backstabbing. Just define yourself against maybe another Labour mayor, maybe closer to the centre of the Labour spectrum, someone like Andy Burham. What's the big difference?
Well, actually, I would say that Andy and I work very well together on a lot of issues. I think once you get outside of Westminster, you get into the practical realities of being in power and making a difference. So I think perhaps not so much against the Labour mayors, but some of the mayors. I'll not say who it was. I was talking to a Conservative recently who says the difference between me and Ben Hoochin is he does these big programmes, a bit like building the pyramids, and you're there irrigating the land and actually creating the jobs. That's why we have so many people in good, well-paid work already. So it's really the co-design, working with the businesses, with the communities, with the colleges, with the universities, and saying to them, look, you are the people in the front line. You understand this better. How can we knit this together and get some good outcomes fast?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I earlier called you a Corbynite. Can I take it from what you said? Because you say you can do business with Michael Gove, that you are now fully behind Keir Starmer, who comes from a different tradition.
I absolutely want Keir to be Prime Minister. I might have a few policy disagreements with him on some issues, but we'll see what they are, because we don't know yet.
You don't disagree yet, but you're just reserving the right to disagree.
His 10 pledges, I think, are very good.
Oh, right. I'm going to move on. Time catches up. Good to talk to you. Thank you for coming on the show. That's Jamie Driscoll, the Labour North of Tyne Mayor.